Hello everyone. In this lecture we are going to discuss about the different types of contract used in construction industry. So before that, let's discuss about the definition of contract. The legal definition according to the Indian Contract Act 1872, it is defined as an agreement which are enforceable as such having been made by free consent of the parties by persons competent to contract for a lawful consideration and lawful object and which are not expressly declared to be void by any statute. So I'd like to focus on the words that are marked on red and why these words are important. So that part I leave to you, why these are important, and maybe there will be some assignment based on this kind of discussions. Now let's go directly to the different types of contract. So a contract is when a certain bidder is given the award of or is being invited to carry out the work because he or she may have quoted the lowest price or based on some technical score and such we have selected that this particular bidder will be suitable for carrying out the work. So after that some documents are signed, so that those are contract documents, and there everything, all the agreements will be mentioned and both the parties will generally sign on that document. So there are different types of these contracts. In some small projects we generally go for lump sum or cost plus contract, but generally for the large scale construction projects we go for measurement contract, within which there are three different types. And in some difficult projects where we do not know exactly the specifications, then we let the contractor decide and design the project and also construct the project. So let's discuss them in detail. The first one is lump sum contract. So here the contractor agrees to carry out all the work for a lump sum amount of money, and he or she will be bound or liable to complete the work for the agreed upon amount of payment irrespective of the actual expenditure incurred in the project. So if the client and the contractor agrees that this work will be completed with the exchange of 1 lakh rupees, in that case no matter how much expenditure the contractor has incurred, he will be paid only 1 lakh rupees. This kind of contract will be suitable only for small scale projects where lots of uncertainties are not there. That means beforehand we can be almost certain that what kind of cost will be, what kind of expenditure will be there in the project. Sometimes another type of contract is adopted, which is the cost plus contract. Here the contractor is paid back all the allowed expenditure. That means whatever amount he has paid for the laborers, the materials, and after that the client will pay back all those amounts. And here you see the word allowed expenditure is used, and that means all the expenditure that are relevant to the project and required for execution of the project, those are the allowed expenditure. So all those will be paid back by the client to the contractor, and in addition a pre-negotiated amount will also be paid as profit. So sometimes that amount will maybe in terms of percentage, sometimes it may be in terms of direct amount of money, but this has this advantage of guaranteed profit. That means no matter how much is the expenditure, a certain amount of profit will be there for the contractor, unlike in case of lump sum contract. So in lump sum contract, for some reason if the contractor has to spend more due to some difficulties, in that case he'll or she will still get only the agreed upon amount of money which was previously agreed upon. Now the most common type of contract is measurement contract. And in measurement contract also there are three types. One is item rate contract, the second is percentage rate contract, and the third one is rate only contract. So let's first discuss about item rate contract. The measurement contracts are actually called measurement contracts because the payment is made based on actual measurement of the work that has been completed. For example, in this first one, item rate contract, the contractor will carry out various work items based on their agreed upon unit price or rate. So if a building project has several items, RCC, PCC, brickwork, earth filling and excavation, steel and carpentry and all those things. So all those things will be quoted based on their individual rates. And therefore, the bill of quantities or BOQ will be available to the contractor before tendering, and that is the estimate of material or items. So based on that, the contractor will decide the rate per unit of these items and also the total amount. So in this case, both the rate and the total amount will be available at the moment of signing the contract, and the payment will be released based on actual measurement of these individual items. That means after 2 months, if the excavation is complete or half done, then we will measure how much excavation is done and only pay that much amount. So that's why this is called item rate contract. And most of the building construction projects, a majority of the building construction projects are based on item rate contract. Another type of measurement contract is percentage rate contract. So in this case, in addition to the bill of quantities, that is the amount of items and materials required for a project, the client or the owner also presents the rates, suggested or possible rates of different items. So this is also called the schedule of rates. Now the contractor, instead of thinking of or just finding out the rates of different items for himself, will quote based on the presented price or the given price of items, and he will only quote a percentage, either 1% or 2% or 5% above or below the given rate. So if the client says that artwork will cost 500 rupees per meter cube, then the contractor may offer to carry out that artwork or excavation work for 1% less or 2% less or 1% more and so on. So if it is 1% less, then he will carry out the work for 495 rupees. Another another bidder may say that I'll do it for 2% less. So in that case, he will do it for 490 rupees instead of 495 rupees. So in this case, instead of letting the price of items vary widely, the client already sets up a kind of a benchmark based on which certain variation will be there, on which the contract will be awarded. This is done so that the reasonable prices are quoted by the different contractors or bidders. We'll see later on in some other lecture why this kind of practice is adopted, because if the bidders are given the free way to decide the different rates of different items, some difficulties may arise. We'll discuss those things later on. Now, another type of contract is measurement contract only. So it is rate only contract. So in this case, the bill of quantity is not available, which means that before carrying out the work or starting the project, we don't even know what is the total amount of work to be done. So we may think of those kind of this kind of projects. For example, if you are boring for water, groundwater, generally in some places we do not know after how much boring we are going to reach the water table. So in that case, the contractor or the bidder will only quote the price based on per meter drilling or boring. So beforehand, we do not know how many meters or how many feet we have to do the boring, and only after we reach the groundwater table and put all the pumps and wells and pipes, then based on how many meters we have bored, the payment will be made to the contractor. So in this case, only the rate or the unit price for items will be quoted instead of the total amount. I request you to find out different other different examples of this kind of contract where before starting the actual amount of work is unknown. Then another type of contract is turnkey contract. So in this type of contract, the contractor is required to perform both design and construction of the project, which means either the client does not have the time or resources or manpower or expertise to carry out the design, and therefore the client will ask the contractor to carry out the design, then estimate, as well as construction of the entire project. It is also called engineering procurement construction contract, EPC contract, or design and build contract. Then a modern way of contract is a PPP mode of contract, which means public private partnership. This is generally adopted for public infrastructure projects, for example, highways, bridges, and so on. So the meaning is that public in this case is represented by the government or public sector organization. It's not actually the general public, but on behalf of the public, the government or some kind of government department will act as the client. Now, the partnership is in the way that the contractor will be required to arrange the funding for execution of the project of the work. That means the client is not going to pay the contractor the funds. So how is the contractor going to get his money back? So after completion of the project, the contractor is allowed to reclaim the expenses and profit by means of some kind of revenue collected from the users of the project. For example, you can see a toll highway, a highway where you have to pay toll at different, maybe about 100 or 200 kilometer intervals. There will be toll gates. So those kind of highways are constructed with private funding and not public funding. That means the government has not spent the money on those highways, and the public and the private organizations who have constructed the project have actually arranged the funding, and they will get that funding back by collecting tolls from all the vehicles that will pass and that will travel over that road or the highway. Similarly, in case of power projects also, this kind of contract is possible, where the power project will be built by some private investor or private contractor, and the power bill will be also collected from the consumers by this contractor. But in this case, since the government or the client is not paying the contractor anything, so the bidding or the tendering process will not in the tendering process, the contractors or the bidders will not quote price, but instead they will quote time. That means if the contractor is going to construct the highway, for how many years he is going to collect the toll to get his expenses back along with some profit. So in that case, if a contractor says that, if a bidder says that I'll be collecting toll for 30 years and after that I'll hand over the entire project or facility to the government or to the client, and another one comes and he says that I'll collect toll only for 28 years, and after 28 years itself I'll return the project or hand over the project to the government. So in that case, the one who has quoted 28 years will be awarded the project. So here, instead of money, the revenue is actually time. This PPP mode or public private partnership mode has different schemes. So they are BOT, that is build operate transfer, BOOT, build operate own transfer, then BOO, build own operate, then design build finance operate transfer, then build operate own share transfer. These are different modes and they vary slightly from one another, but the basic concept is same. Now I request you to go through these different schemes of PPP mode and find out how they are different from one another, and I'll possibly give some assignment based on this topic. So this is about the different types of contract. This is not exactly an exhaustive list of contracts. There may be other variations as well, but in a crude way, these are the different types of contracts. So in the next lecture, we'll discuss about the role of a civil engineer in operation of a contract, both on the client side as well as on the contractor side. So that's all for this lecture. Thank you.